with the rising living costs. Now, the Ministry of Labour has warned that rushing to increase the minimum wage could cause job losses. But critics are saying the delay worsens the inequalities and hardships. Now, the key question is, how long can workers wait? And today's discussion will focus on if companies are already paying a living wage, what then justifies government from delaying implementation in the rest of the economy and other sectors. Now, this morning we are hosting here in studio labor expert Keaoleboga Dipogiso to shed a bit more light on this topic this morning. Let me welcome you. Good morning. Thank you for coming through.
Thank you so much, ma.
Right. Re bua ka puso e le ka go tota go rotloetsa kana go kgarametsa gore madi 4,000 pula e nne one selo se leng gore motho kana mhire a seka a wela ko tlase ga sone a re tsene ha gore 4,000 ene hela mme go ya ka ga tlhaloganyang ka teng o tswa ha kae ke ra gore ke eng se 3,000 kana 5,000 kana 2,000 4,000 ene o tswa ha kae what informed this 4,000
nya that's a very good question ebile e re tisa gona ha gore re atla te khanya gore go tilwe jang go 4,000 e se khanya gore go ngwe ka nna 6,000 kana 7,000 maybe le go simolla go e discuss ke gone gore re thalose gore living wage keng minimum wage ke
potso ya morutu tha yone
living wage kana e tabo ile selo sa madi a ile gore ha go ba lwa di expenses tsa motho maybe the average motswana what the food basket ya motho yo ke bokana ga ka ke a tshela sentle e le gore wa amogela madi a ka ta se ga gone mo me la bohelo ke dumela gore I think ke household survey ya statistics Botswana ya 2018 also
okay
ene ya super gone gore living wage ke I think it was 4,000 then ka 2018 gora gone gore ha ile gore re lebeletse dingwaga tsa 2018 be re lebella le progression from 2018 to gompieno ke batla o dumela gore 4,000 wa minimum wage wa living wage as a calculation of the household expenses of the average Motswana ga e ka ke a nna ene 4,000
o hitilwe
ke nako minimum wage on the other side ke tota normally is a legalistic institution where you say please don't pay beneath this amount
ka molao
me gone gape re tirwe gone gore living wage e ka nna yone minimum wage gape e le gone gore ha ile gore calculate le food basket be re dumela gore ke 4,000 gore go sena ope o ka duelang ko tsa ga ene 4,000 ene yo which is what I think the current government is trying to do gore go setilwe selo sa 4,000 ha ile gore go ta gore go a go gone mo gore 4,000 ene one minimum wage go tshwantse gore go nne le molao go ta bo phasiwa ke parliament o supa gore go duela ko tsa ga 4,000 e ta bo ile molato mo tsela tswa
ra di bosa go a re tsene ha kana dilo tse ha di gore ga di le disha mo go rona re le Batswana ha gongwe ra ipotsa ra etsa ga gone mmehela tota thulaganyo ke so se tlwaelesegileng go le kahe ke batla gore ke bokete bo le kahe kana selo se le kahe sa mahatshe hela the economies mo le hatsheng ka bophara tse leng gore di tsentse tsamaiso ye mo tirisong.
Minimum wage is a very conventional practice. It's used all over the world. I don't quite remember a country that doesn't have a minimum wage. Ke gore hela a go ngore ta ra harologana re bile re kopanya tsone di concepts tsone. Actually le gone mo Botswana we have a minimum wage, a sector based. Wa harologana gore go domestic sector house help house onzo ra duele 1.5 go agricultural sector modisa o tshwanetse ra duele bokana ke one minimum wage yone o teng mo molaong e tshwanetse gore normally go nne mo molaong gore ga wa tshwanna go duelwa ha ile go bereka mo sectoreng ye ga wa tshwanna go duelwa bokana tota normally le gone gore dipuisano tse tshwanetse gore di tsene gone go di sectoreng tsone tse go tshwanetse gore go nne le tsela kana tsamaiso e leng gore the stakeholders in every sector they meet and discuss this particular issue gore memo sectoreng ye re dumela gore go ka duelwa bokana
Okay.
And then of course living wage gongwe le one teng e ntse, I think across the world a lot of countries are using it, but as I mentioned earlier, it is a calculation of the household basket,
Right.
as compared to what is transpiring in Botswana, where it was just spiked from political campaigns, and it never really was there was a basis
for it,
upon which it was couched. Yes.
So ka mantswe a mangwe la se la Botswana kore ga se tlholontsha ga re tlhole ke so se leng gore se tshwanetse gore se be se ka be se le mo tsamaisong.
Ke selo se se siameng thata gore go nne le minimum wage ebile o le ka ga molaong gore le gone gore babereki ba ska ba gatelelwa ba ska ba jewa ntsoma ke bahiri ke go mo go siameng thata tota.
Okay. Gore puso e be buile jana gore keletso ke e be e rotloetsa mme se e gagamatse setoropo ya nna mo molaong. Gona methulaganyo e nna eng ha ile gore ya nna re batla go tsenya mo tirisong re tsenya mo molaong thulaganyo ya go nna jana.
I think currently the government is simply trying to cajole people to pay that 4,000 Pula. Across all sectors, I think so.
Yeah.
And I think there was a point where it was also discussed gore gongwe le gongwe tota motho tshwantse gore a duelwe 4,000.
Gore a ke sector ele ene wa ja a ke sector ele ene wa ja
go ntse jalo o tshwantse gore a duelwe ja mme tsamaiso e tlwaelesegileng ke gone gore dipuisano di tshwantse gore di tsene at a forum which we normally discuss about, the tripartite forum.
Right.
Between the business sector, the labor and government. Ga bo go dumalana go etswa kganye gore nya living wage kana minimum wage kana bokana.
So se tshwanetseng sa iragala ke moraro gongwe o ka re sedimosetsa gore re dirile go le kae kana re dirile eng hela re le puso ya la hasla Botswana ha e sa le ka re lemoga gore me 4,000 kana selo go diragetseng go le ka go gone go.
Hey, like I was saying earlier, government has been trying to cajole the business sector to try to move towards that direction. And I think, as you might know, a couple of companies have pledged gore ba ta khona go duela bokalo.
Ele bona ba ikitase
ele bona ba ikitase ba hela ha gona space se ba pateletsang gore ba duele ona madi ona.
Okay.
Currently, and I think ultimately, like I always say, there has to be a law gore pateletsa batho gore ba duele minimum wage o beilwe. But currently 4,000 is not the minimum wage. It's just a narrative that is being peddled across the political cycles. Yes.
Okay. So then this conversation has not happened in the tripartite this far.
It has happened, but not to completion.
Okay.
If I remember very well, the Business Botswana, they had a proposal ba dumela gore gona le di company dingwe tse di tshwantse gore di kore tse di na le bokgoni ba go duela mme ebile ba dumela gore go ya go ene 4,000 eno go tshwantse gore go tsamaye ka di category le dinako eska gare ga nna nako e one hela go tenya re duele.
Okay.
On the other side, I think labor is saying no, what are we losing? I mean, if you can pay 4,000 Pula, you have to pay 4,000 Pula.
Okay.
Yes, and I think true to that, the companies in Botswana, they actually have the capacity and capability ya go duela 4,000 Pula.
Okay.
One of the companies they declare the profits tse di seng kana ka sepe ngwaga le ngwaga maybe le gora gona gore ha ile gore go ka lebellwa sentle during the wage negotiations tsonetse those declarations can actually form a very important opinion as to whether they will be able to pay or not.
Ha re nteng ya ka tlhalosa gore gona di company dingwe bora di kgwebo bang ba ile gore gone ba ka khona ha re lebella space sa bone mme ano ka puso ke ena a tlhokometseng dikeletso kana matshelo a setšhaba bangwe ba botsa gore puso ene ke nga sa re etelle pele a nna sekao go thata ha kae mo khirong ya puso to lead by example.
Yone ke sa ba to tsenela mo gone ka gore is undergoing discussion at the current 5+1 negotiations.
Right.
Me hela gone go ka itumedisa thata ne gore mente a ka supa ka boeteledipele as this ke thola ke bua gantsi ntse thata that government is a model employer. Ke ene the issue of the social code is the one who makes regulations. He should comply with them. If government has said that they are not desirous of people who are earning less than 4,000, then they have to commit by way of policy to ensure that everyone earns 4,000. Yes.
Okay, tla re tlogela re ska tloga ra ikgotlela e se butswe
Ntse yalo mo.
re tlogela tsa me e butswe gone mme ha ile gore ke so se se nenekediwang jana ke batla ke dumela ke re gona gore gona le ka tshwa ka pros and cons or sensitivities go ngwa re tsena gone ho gore minimum wage o ka nna le di-advantage di o ka nna le di-disadvantage di
wa itse gore challenge ya minimum wage o reiswang ka molao ka go pateletsa ka molao ke gore you might experience a situation where companies that cannot pay that amount of money actually crowd out of business, because if you have to pay 10 people 4,000 Pula every month, yet you're only making profits about 100,000 or 200,000, you have to pay other things, you have to pay other utilities, or ipitala business go palela. So gape hela le di sector ha di lekane. Gona le di SME kana lone mola gona di regulations so far tsa gore SME go iragala eng gona le domestic sector
gona di individual that are employers,
that are employers and all of that. So I also want to clarity as to what has to obtain ultimately. Mehela ke dumela gore maybe we have the benefit of inviting by business Botswana gore ba tlhalose sente ke bona ba itseng sente kganye gore ha go twe company ya khona go twa company ya selebego se kae ebile ga o pateletsa company A go duela e ka tswa ha ya ema ha kae ka go duela. Me I know for sure that not all companies will be able to pay a raised minimum wage gongwe ele abrupt through means of a law.
Okay.
Yes.
Me kana le yone labor sector ena le go supiwa ka monwana ha gongwe ha re bua ka bo work ethic re bua ka bo productivity gore a me le ene labor sector wa iteba gore kana mme gore company X a khone gore a khone go ntuela kana gore a le nna ke le mmereke go ikitaka tupana ke tsora ye pisana. This conversation, is it started yet?
O ta itse gore no ke pisano e ka nnang go dipisanong tsone ka botsone gore ha ile gore re ka ya go duelana 4,000 re le babereki le bahiri. What is the contribution of labor in terms of productivity, as you correctly point? But gona le an issue e ratang go buiwa thata ke batla gore gongwe re tsene mo we discussed it a bit last time gore productivity kana is a function of management. It's not just a topic e leng gore gongwe it's cast on stone. Gona di tsela tse dintsi tse di harologaneng that can be used by employers to enhance productivity ha ba bereki ha ba se productive. Ngwa tsone ke gone go ba motivate, right? There are many reports that show the work ethic of Botswana generally is very low, right? And part of the issues ke gone gore Botswana are amongst the least paid employees across the Southern African region, for example. Yes. So if you were to enhance productivity, you would also look at those factors gore ane but ba motivated enough ga ba dira gona di khanza bo underemployment, where you come with a certain qualification but you are engaged for a qualification that befits someone who is lower than you with qualifications. Gona di khanza bo some my intern di dintsi tse leng gore gongwe ha re di lebella wholesomely. They built an institution of marginalizing productivity in that regard, mainly from the side of management. Reskara e ba hela gore ke khanya gore Batswana ga ba khone go dira tiro. Batswana ba ile dikolong, Batswana ke batho ba ile gore generally hela they are competent. Me hela ha ile gore gona le khonagalo ya gore motho a nne boitseme. Ke khonagalo e leng gore e dirwa ke gore mo company melao ya ga gamadiwa. And those institutions have to be strengthened. It's not only a workplace issue. It's also an aggregate economic issue.
Absolutely.
That you have to have output as a country. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so for an economy that whose productivity or whose performance is questionable currently, just to say the least, minimum wage ga ona go tla o dira I don't know if sector by sector competitiveness, you know, or just that inspiration for growth and competitiveness. Like it's
We didn't have a minimum wage because, like I said earlier, there will be sector by sector, the monopolies will arise.
right.
They will consolidate their power. If government brings a law to say you are going to pay people 4,000, those who will be able will monopolize the sector. Let's take the retail sector, for example. Already there are people who are saying we can pay.
And interesting, it's been retail.
Exactly.
Yes.
And there are people who cannot pay. What will happen to them if you bring a law? It means that they have to pay or ship out. Right. So those are the sensitivities of an institutionalized minimum wage. We would rather discuss it. You'd rather discuss it more sectary. But if you bring a law to say the minimum, and I think we've had this discussion before that sometimes if you bring a law that says pay this amount, you are actually marginalizing business viability in those sectors. Yes.
How are we doing? How are we tshwantshanya bo morara rona mo Africa? No bua gore ke so se le gore ke so modiro sa diragala bahatse ka ba bangwe mo Africa re gaisana jang ha re tla gone go tlhokomela mmereki ka tsela eo ya go ba tsone selo dielo tsa go nna yana bo minimum wage bo living wage.
Yes, I will speak more tataka the institutions that facilitate strong wage institutions. Collective bargaining, for example. Our collective bargaining institutions are historically and traditionally weak as compared to countries in the region. The reason why in South Africa they say they pay better than us is because the labor sector there is strong because of the strong institutional participation of labor in wage negotiations. And also the laws there are enabling for collective bargaining to happen. Whereas in our country, we've had a lot of parochial approaches, or rather paternalistic protection of workers, where you're only protected in terms of what a wage subtractiwa, how do it's overtime, what I do, or how very overtime, what I do, and all of that. There hasn't been a thorough institutional support for collective bargaining to happen in the workplace, especially in the private sector. And more importantly also in the public service, because we've only had collective bargaining at 08, right, up until now, even though you can see that still blemishes here and there.
So what do you talk about?
Strong institutional support, yes. Melao is on support the collective. Actually, minimum wage or raise collective bargaining. If the collective bargaining institutions are strong, then you will have productivity, you will have the minimum wage, you'll have, because for example, let me just give this example so that Batswana le na kgona go tlhaloga. Ha ile gore molao o letella bahiri gore ba duele bahire ka di contracts about 6 months, 1 year. It will be very difficult for babereki gore ba unionize, ba kopane, ba kgone go ipuelele. Because normally the union busting strategy is that when you raise your voice, they don't renew the contract. When you raise your voice, 12 months, exactly. Now it becomes very difficult for the workers organized in that particular sector to unionize. But I look there is protection, longevity, contract. Then workers can actually compel the employers to come to the table, because it's not easy to bust the union in that regard. Yes.
What is it going to take? Because the contract 6 months as it is, and that would seem to marginalize a good sector of labor.
Yes. Yes. The current employment and labor relations bill is trying to deal with that. Right. Yes, it has tried to discourage short-term contracts by all means. It has also tried to encourage this exploitative probation practice, where you're told after 3 months you can leave without being given any reasons and all of that. tota hela go bua boammaaruri, the current labor and employment relations, which will turn into an act, we are only awaiting the president to sign it. Yes. It will deal with a lot of things, including the dispute resolution.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, are tswale the boammaaruri mme gone bo reng ke batla ke tsa the current wage situation and a quality or standard of living situation mo Botswana. How e tshwaela wena o le moitsana wa tsa khiro wa tsa pereko wa reng go ha mme ntse jang?
I guess sure gore ne ke tlhaloganya potso mme hela ke dumela gore to start with Batswana ba duelwa di-wage tsa bokgoba. Batswana ba bereka ka dikonteraka tsa bokgoba. Ha gona inspection enough gore la minimum wage o setilo yana my leader o ta ithala ile gore a ngwa go tona dingalo gape, because even in the current institutions tsa go seta minimum wage on abo 1.5, you still having people who live in gated neighborhoods in the far out peripheries go di farmong ko kae ba ba duelang ko tlase ga minimum wage wa gompieno. Why? Because go thata gore batho ba labor department they go carry out inspection ko dikgaolong tsone tseo. The other thing that is there is that the implication of migrant labor therefore is that once they come in, they settle for any wage that you give them, right? You can imagine in the agricultural sector, how do you 1.5 because it's running away from an harsh economic situations in our country. They settle for less, and what it does, it thumb presses the scales of the minimum wage setting institutions.
Yes, there's a lot that
and
has
it
to be
becomes very difficult for.
Yeah.
So I think the panacea therefore rests on the ability of government to carry out inspections to ensure that people
rush
actually
you through this unfortunately.
Yes.
Please conclude your point though. Okay. And unfortunately, it's all the time that we have. Time is really shutting us down right here. Thank you so much for coming through.
Thank you.
So together with the labor expert, we are discussing the fact that Botswana is pushing for 1,000 Pula minimum wage, the pros, the cons, what are the delays, and so on and so forth. But this conversation will be continued as we visit what are the challenges to this universal implementation of this.
The cost of care is one thing that is cannot be dilly-dallied anymore. With the communication that was sent out this week, it's now the reality that we need to talk to. Health is becoming expensive. We have known of the rising cost of care long back. But I think the challenge has always been, how driven were we to pull it back, to slow it down? I have put in there, and this is actually an update by WHO, which was looking at the GHE, and this was updated in July 2025. With this growth, the growth that is being shown as the domestic public spending and even the out-of-pocket, 40 to 60% of this spending is in the tertiary. Tertiary care is now when we say we have missed the step in preventative care. So we are already spending at the far end when the people we need to avert death. So we still, if you remember the two arrows there, we are still on the red arrow and we still have not seen the growth. Because if we are spending and if we are seeing the growth in the expenditure of health, and this is mainly in the tertiary care, then it means that more than ever we need to reflect and think on how do we slow this down. And this picture has not changed, and I know that when we look at it aggregated like this, it may look far off. the picture has not changed if we come closer to home, because with the domestic spending, we are paying for less than 100,000 people. We are paying in the region exceeding 800 million in a year. So you can count, or you can calculate per capita how much we are really spending. And we still maintain that 40 to 60% is still paid in the tertiary area. That is the high care. This says that it is the amount of money that can be unlocked to bringing it into preventative care. The last time when I had a discussion, someone asked me to say, if ESBO made you want to invest in preventative care, where are you getting the savings? And this is the only picture that, as I am seated here with the people that I take it, and I believe you are the converted, we can always say, for me to build a business case of saying what the value of preventative care, I can always bring it to saying, if you look at the trajectory of spending, then we can know that we are spending to almost unaffordability of healthcare. We are now going towards the point where health is now driving people into extreme poverty. And we cannot allow communities to going into extreme poverty if we want the communities to be growing.
mo dikganyetsana kwa lesome le motso ditlhogo tsa tsone sa re setšhaba se supa kgatlhego mo go tsamaiseng itsholo ya lehatshe leno ka ntsha megopolo ya dikgwebo e heta 6,000. 78% ya borre ba amiwa ke dikotsi tsa tsela mo MVA e reng go kokonela malwapa. fa tatona lehatshe la Amerika a simolotse go baakanyetsa phuthego ya peo marumahatshe gareng ga Ukraine le Russia.